Y'all need to stop making your lives revolve around issues like Palestine and whatnot.
Yes, and whatnot. Let's definitely not forget about the whatnot. By the way, disclaimer, no hate to this creator, strictly for educational purposes and whatnot.
Saying this to demean the cause. It is very tragic.
Tragic is an earthquake. Tragic is a hurricane. Tragic is a car accident. Romeo and Juliet was tragic. What is happening in Gaza is not a tragedy. It is a foreign policy decision being made by our government to support financially, materially, diplomatically, and militarily with troops on the ground now.
We'll get way overly involved in global problems. And I'm going to say something that you need to hear for your own mental health. You're probably not going to like it, but you need to hear it. You cannot do anything about it.
I do like that he's saying that like it's some kind of groundbreaking information that none of us have heard, but we all need to hear when we're American. We're literally indoctrinated from the time that we are born not to give a shit about what happens in the rest of the world. I promise you no one needs to remind Americans how to be self-centered. We know. And in recent years, the whole mental health movement has really been hijacked by corporations. It's been commodified and it's been used as a way to actually make us more self-centered, if that makes sense. One of the things I learned in early recovery was how focusing too much on yourself can actually be really toxic. That doesn't mean that you don't do work on yourself. I am a big advocate of mental health care. However, the way that our society always treats mental health as just a way to be more selfish. Like, just care about yourself. Just look inward, look inward. It can actually not be good for your mental health to constantly be looking inward. Sometimes you need to get outside of yourself and help others. I just think it's so funny that he's like, listen, I know you're not gonna want to hear it, but it's like a serious truth. You care too much about what's happening in the world. You care too much about what's happening in Gaza. Bro, Americans giving a flying fuck about what other people in the rest of the world go through so that we can have more shit is not a serious thing that needs to be addressed.
Cannot do anything about it. There are going to be bad things that happen in the world that you simply do not have the ability to help.
This was probably the worst, the most damaging part of this video, I think, was him saying you can't do anything about it. Just like disempowering people. I understand the sentiment of like, you can't constantly fill your brain with like horrible things. It will drive you crazy. Trust me, I know, okay? I've spent the last year watching children get blown up and lose their limbs and organs and faces and heads in Gaza. And yes, watching all of that stuff all the time and watching the news all the time, yes, it definitely affects your mental health. And I'm not saying that everybody has to be like me and be constantly knowing what's going on in the news all the time. But there is something really dark and privileged about knowing that our government is so complicit in what is happening in Gaza and then being like, I don't want to watch it though. It gives me the sads. To conflate being constantly informed about what's happening in the news at all times and how that can take a toll on your mental health with saying that there's nothing you can do about it is very insidious. Yes, there is. And yes, there are things that are happening in the world that we can't do anything about. Yeah, I'm aware of that. I think most people are aware that there are things that are out of our control. But when it comes to Palestine specifically, it's just not true. Yeah, sure, there's nothing we can do about North Korea at the present. But even North Korea, American foreign policy affects countries all over the globe. Our government, who we vote for, makes decisions that affects countries all over the globe, so you can't say it has nothing to do with us or that we can't do anything about it. And yes, I know many of those things are indirect, but Palestine, that was the example that you chose to use. We are directly implicated in what is happening in Palestine. Directly. Something simple that you can do in your everyday life is boycott. BDS, go to their website. They have a list of active boycotts. That's just something that you can do, and it's free because by boycotting something, you're just not buying something. You know what else is free? Harassing your congresspeople, which is your right as an American citizen. You could donate or raise money for families in Gaza that are trying to evacuate into Egypt. If you don't know where to start, you can go to Operation Olive Branch's page and follow them and find a family, or you can go to my Linktree and donate to one of the families that are in my Linktree that are trying to evacuate. There are things that you can do. So to give advice to Americans when we're already chauvinistic and selfish and we're already so self-centered that we don't give a fuck about anything that happens outside of our borders, it's actually very harmful. It's just giving people an excuse to further disengage as if we're not already pros at that. Actually, the most depressing thing about this is that this post got 104,000 likes. 104,000 people thought that this was good advice. Jesus, take the wheel.